Mr. Chairman, I'd like to begin by putting some letters in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
If you want to tell me.
140 letters from friends and neighbors of the witness and 1,000 female physicians across the country. Those are what the letters are.
Don't look at this.
I want to thank you very much for your testimony. I know how very, very hard it is. Why have you held it to yourself all these years? As you look back, can you indicate what the reasons are?
Well, I haven't held it in all these years. I did disclose it in the confines of therapy, where I felt like it was an appropriate place to cope with the sequelae of the event.
Well, can you tell us what impact the events had on you?
Well, I think that the sequelae of sexual assault varies by person. So for me personally, anxiety, phobia, and PTSD-like symptoms are the types of things that I've been coping with. So more specifically, claustrophobia, panic, and that type of thing.
Is that the reason for the second door, front door?
Correct.
Is claustrophobia?
Correct. It doesn't. Our house does not look aesthetically pleasing from the curb.
I see. And do you have that second front door?
Yes.
You prevail? Yes.
It now is a place to host Google interns because we live near Google, so we get to have, and other students can live.
Can you tell us, is there any other way this has affected your life?
The primary impact was in the initial 4 years after the event. I struggled academically. I struggled very much in Chapel Hill and in college. When I was 17 and went off to college, I had a very hard time, more so than others, forming new friendships and especially friendships with boys. And I had academic problems.
What were the when we spoke and it became very clear how deeply you felt about this and the need that you wanted to remain confidential. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So I was watching carefully throughout the summer. Well, my original intent, I just want to remind, was to communicate with everyone when there was still a list of candidates who all seemed to be, just from my perspective, from what I could read, equally qualified. And I was in a hurry to try to get the information forward, but didn't quite know how to do that. However, once he was selected and it seemed like he was popular and that it was a sure vote, I was calculating daily the risk-benefit for me of coming forward and wondering whether I would just be jumping in front of a train that was headed to where it was headed anyway, and that I would just be personally annihilated.
How did you decide to come forward?
Ultimately, because reporters were sitting outside of my home and trying to talk to my dog through the window to calm the dog down, and a reporter appeared in my graduate classroom, and I mistook her for a student, and she came up to ask me a question, and I thought that she was a student, and it turned out that she was a reporter. So at that point, I felt like enough was enough. People were calling my colleagues at Stanford and leaving messages on their voicemails and on their email saying that they knew my name. Clearly, people knew my address because they were out in front of my house. And it just, the mounting pressure, it seemed like it was time to just say what I needed to say.
I'm sorry. I want to ask you one question about the attack itself. You are very clear about the attack, being pushed into the room. You say you don't know quite by whom, but that it was Brett Kavanaugh that covered your mouth to prevent you from screaming, and then you escaped. How are you so sure that it was he?
The same way that I'm sure that I'm talking to you right now. It's just basic memory functions, and also just the level of norepinephrine and epinephrine in the brain that sort of, as you know, encodes, that neurotransmitter encodes memories into the hippocampus, and so the trauma-related experience then is kind of locked there, whereas other details kind of drift.
So what you are telling us is this could not be a case of mistaken identity.
Absolutely not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.